I'll begin. Okay. A very good day to one and all, and a warm welcome to the 24th talk of the Inter-Society weekly webinar series, jointly organized by IEEE Kerala Section, the Institution of Engineers India, Kerala State Centre, Computer Society of India, Trivandrum Chapter, PMI Kerala Chapter, Internet Society Trivandrum Chapter, Vakka Maulavi Foundation Trust Trivandrum, and IEEE EMBS Kerala Chapter. With us, we have a speaker, Professor Shangadharan, who is a senior fellow of the Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. And he will be taking us along his webinar on Education Policy 2020, the school level. And this is a topic of utmost interest and curiosity, especially when we consider the current scenario that we have of the COVID pandemic. So firstly, I would like to welcome Aishwarya Ravi from the CSI UKF to give the welcome address. Can we have you, ma'am?
Yes, thank you. Good evening to all. I myself Aishwarya Ravi, and I am here to welcome you all to our 24th Inter-Society weekly webinar series talk on Education Policy 2020 school level. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all. First of all, I welcome our speaker, Professor M. Shangadharan, Senior Fellow, Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. Welcome you, sir, to this event. Then I also welcome Professor Achyut Shankar S. Nair sir, S. Suhair sir, Haridrilal sir, and the entire crew behind this. Also, I welcome Fida Fatima and all other eminent personalities in this session. Once again, welcome you all to this event. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, I would like to welcome Professor Achyut Shankar S. Nair to introduce our speaker. Can we have you, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Very good evening to all of you. I have a very small but important task to do to introduce Professor Shangadharan, the speaker of today's webinar. I will do it in as few sentences that I can. Professor Shangadharan is one of the most eminent professors from the University of Kerala, who has made his mark as a teacher, as a scholar, as a writer, as an administrator, as an administration innovator. Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Yes. I'm hearing an echo. I think everybody needs to switch off their mic other than me. Okay, I'll continue. He has served the University of Kerala as professor and head of the Department of Commerce for a very long time. And before that, he served as a faculty member in both University of Calicut and University of Kerala. And I very fondly remember that I was a school kid when he entered into teaching profession in the University of Calicut. And I knew him from there through my father, who was also a professor. Professor Shangadharan has guided perhaps a record number of PhDs in the Department of Commerce. I recall that the contributions done through these research students has been compiled into a book, which is considered as a very inevitable reference for students of commerce and especially researchers. Professor Shangadharan, when he was very young, had an opportunity to wield power when he served as an administrator. Sir, am I right? Was that the
government administrator?
Government administrator of the Srinarayana Trust at Shivagiri. I must make a mention that in his scholarship, under his scholarship, also comes the Srinarayana philosophy. If you look up newspapers and if you look up the web, you will see that he speaks on nuances of the great Guru. So he, at a very young age, he was in a very, very important position, also possibly a very controversial position. And he ran the show very well and stood his ground with truth and justice and made a mark. I must also say that today, after his retirement, as he served as professor and head, and then thereafter he became dean of the Faculty of Commerce. He was director of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell of the University of Kerala. During his deanship, he had very important roles to play in the legislation that was brought out by the university, all new legislations brought out by the university. As an insider, I can share the secret that was crafted by Dr. Sargadharan. And he has also made his mark as a career advisor, you could say a career expert. So I see that right now his web talk series is going on about career advice. I also observe that he is a very good communicator and a very good conversationalist, a very friendly conversationalist. And he mentors and encourages young people, even though I don't any longer fall into the category of young people, as you can see from the touch of gray here and there on my face. He holds hands of younger people than him and always gives them good advices. I am very sure that his talk today on the education policy would be very much worth listening for one particular important reason, that of course he keeps on observing changes going on and makes comments. But one very special thing I would like to say, what I observed is that he is a person with no political prejudice. Maybe he is a political person, I do not know, or nor am I interested in it.
No,
But
I'm not interested in politics.
But I have observed that, when an issue comes, when a new law comes, new reform comes, he looks at it with fresh eyes and takes unprejudiced positions on it. So it doesn't matter whether the law is credited to Narendra Modi or to Pinarayi Vijayan or to A.K. Antony. He has a take on it based on first principles, for which I think his views on the education policies, it would be a very beneficial one. I have no doubt about it. Right now, he's after serving as an ICSSR fellow in the Kerala University, he is now with the Gulati Institute of
I was
Finance.
a UGC emeritus professor there, and then now I am at ICSR fellow.
Okay, sir. So, having served after service, being very active, he is even now active. So, I am very happy to introduce Professor Sargadharan through these few words and few sentences. And I can assure you that we are in for a very scholarly analysis of the national education policy in its general education part of the policy, because it's a very huge thing to talk about the whole policy. So I think Dr. Sargadharan very cleverly confined himself to one so that he could do justice. So this is again another aspect of his personality. So I will stop here. I have a very long name, and I just need to say about our relationship between me and Professor Sargadharan, that he chooses to call me just 10% of my very long name. So that is how friendly and how affectionate he is towards me. I'm very, very thankful to the organizers for giving
I call him Achu.
I'm very thankful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to introduce Professor Sargadharan. Over to the organizers. Thank you very much, and my namaskaram to Sargadharan, sir.
Thank you, sir. So next it's over to Sargadharan, sir, for the address. Can we have you, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Very nice of you. So, good evening, my dear friends. First of all, I'm thankful to Dr. Achu for the nice or sweet words that encourages me to speak on the topic assigned to me. As you all know, the topic assigned is New Education Policy 2020. In this case, we will have to start it in a particular manner. As you all know, education could be at two different levels. One is at school level, another is at higher education level. Although I've been associated with higher education, I would like to speak on school education because at the grassroots level, we need changes, and changes are needed for certain reasons. I'll present my lecture in three parts. The first part would be why education should be given this much consideration or this much importance. Second is we will have a just look into the earlier policies. And the third one would be we will be coming to the real proposals that have come up. Remember, they are remaining as proposals, and the finalization would be taking place after certain decisions by important bodies mentioned in the doc. Okay, let us start. In a progressive society, it is expected that the government will have to look after the welfare of the people by supporting on several different aspects. They are food, shelter, and clothing. These were the basic requirements from time immemorial, and it still continues. But 4 more factors have come that shows the sign of a progressive society. They are education, health, source of income or employment, or means of living, and another is social security. I don't want to explain all the 7 factors because you are all enlightened people who are well versed with these things. I'm concentrating my attention on education. Education should be assigned significance in our society for a specified reason. See, let us start like this. Education should be natural, it should be harmonious, and progressive development of man's innate powers. Definitely, in the process, we will have to impart knowledge. Then we will have to develop various skills. It could be basic skills, it could be professional skills, it could be technical skills, and skills will go on like that. Anyway, we will have to make a mention of it in a later stage. Then another is, that's of very much importance, inculcating proper attitudes and values towards life and society. Why is it so? See, take the case of Indian economy. We have several problems for our economy, of which 2-3 things could be of very much importance. One is we have the problem of unemployment. Another is we have regional imbalances in development. There is wide disparity in the distribution of national income. Let us take these 3 values. Definitely, for the purpose of ensuring welfare to the people, and also for the purpose of providing more employment opportunities, and for the purpose of removing or reducing the regional imbalances, and also for reducing the disparity in the distribution of income, development measures will have to be implemented, will have to be evolved and implemented by the government. In that case, some of the fair view, no, I'm not really sharing you this much information. It's known to all. Only with the participation of the people, there will be success. For the purpose of creating an awareness among the people regarding their roles in the economic development of our country, or for the purpose of inculcating the spirit that we will have to work for one and one will have to work for the others. That sort of an awareness should be created, and that will be created by education. Education is instrumental in getting people liberated. And that's how we believe from earlier periods. In our economy, in addition to the people's participation, certain specific things are also required, certain changes are also required. There has to be leadership on the global stage in terms of economic growth. Or we are highly desirous of becoming the superpower in the world. And in that case, we'll have to come forward, we'll have to undertake development measures, people will have to work together for the purpose of achieving those goals. Another factor, very sensitive, we are living in a society where social justice and equality, these two things are considered to be the bane for economic development or prosperity of our country. That will have to be completely vanished. And we are living in a society where the advancement of science and technology is very fast, and for that purpose, we will have to adopt such changes taking place in the international scenario, global scenario. And unity in diversity is often a matter widely discussed all over the country. And national integration is the need of the hour, and that also demands proper education. And we'll have to preserve our culture from time immemorial, or we have a very close, very big fame for the past that we have. That glorious past will have to be preserved, and the culture that we have will have to be preserved. And all these things should be demanding education. Another thing, I'll make it more clear. As just now I told you, there will have to be skills. Skills means basic skills like reading, writing, then listening, then writing, speaking. All those things are essentially required for all categories of people. In addition to it, I have told you, we will have to have a leadership quality. Then the interpersonal interpersonal skills will have to be developed. Decision-making capacity will have to be improved, and all those things will be coming under a second category. But I'm telling you a different story. You see, this is mentioned in the Kasturirangan report also. That's a very good thing. Dramatic and scientific technological advances are taking place. And in the process, actually is there, so I'll have to make a special mention of it. Many unskilled jobs worldwide may be undertaken, may be taken over by machines. Then the need for a skilled workforce would be needed, and they would have knowledge or at least awareness about certain. They must be knowing mathematics. They must have a basic idea about computer science, and data science should also be their matter of concern. In a frequently changing world, I can put it in a different way. That could be the next slide. You see, we are learning, but students will have to be trained in such a manner. They will have to learn how to learn, and that's why it will have to be changed. And it is needed for this reason. And it's a fact that we all have to have a general idea about sciences, social sciences, and humanities. Just now I told you, children will have to be trained in such a manner that they are not only learning, but more importantly, learning how to learn. And this is the factor which has been given importance in our educational system. It has been proposed. And in that case, education must build a character. And if you summarize it, education enables the learners to be ethical, and they'll have to be rational, they'll have to be logical, they'll have to be compassionate, and they will have to be scientific, and they will have to be caring. So all the values are well incorporated in the existing knowledge. See, when you take an organization, any organization for that matter, it could be an organization for profit making, or it could be serving the society through their voluntary activities. What would be that in our organization setup, if you make a close watch, you will see three components. I cannot mention it in the slide. Three components. One is human resources. Another is physical resources. And third one is financial resources. And in physical resources, you can make again a classification like man-made resources and natural resources, whatever be it. When you take these three components, you will see that the human resources will be determining the whole fate. If you want to shape human resources for attaining your goal of a superpower in the world, definitely, as I told you earlier, we will have to impart knowledge in a systematic manner. We will have to train them with the required skills, and we will have to develop ethics and values. We will have to inculcate ethics and values in their mind. And that's how we can think of a sustainable development. I've made a mention of this term sustainable development for the purpose of reminding that recently UN has developed, UN has formulated a methodology for attaining SDG4, and they are aiming that it will have to be attained across the world by 2030. What is meant is there will have to be development at least from three different dimensions. In the society, there will not be any sort of a discrimination, or if we cannot completely remove it, it will have to be reduced to the maximum extent possible. And another is economic prosperity. Economic prosperity means you will have to raise your national income, and you will have to raise your per capita income. More importance will have to be attached to the welfare factors connected with it. One is you will have to have infrastructure developed there. Then you will have to think of providing health facilities. You will have to provide facilities for education, and all those things will be combined under economic dimension. In addition to it, the wide disparity that I mentioned earlier among the people will have to, the people with regard to income will have to be reduced. And another factor would be of very much importance. That's the most crucial factor. From the environmental point of view, we will have to conserve the environmental, or will have to take maximum care for protecting the environmental degradation. With this background, so the first part was meant for the purpose of reminding you that education requires much prominence in the economy for the purpose of developing human resources in a holistic manner, and also by imparting knowledge. We will have to have a proper policy, and that policy should be widely debated, and when implemented, it should be accepted by the people as a whole. See, you are from different faculties, you are engaged in different occupations. Some of the people are old people, they think that, you see, my days are over. I've given a maximum consideration for my children, and they are well educated. Their children, it is at the lookout of them. I can remain there. What's the need for knowing more about education and educational policies? No, it should not be like that. I've not been showing the slide of it. Remember this fact. In the process of education, if you make a close observation, you will be able to see 4 components. First is known to all the student. His involvement could be 20%. Another is teachers. They are a little bit highly positioned, and their role could be 25%. And another role will have to be performed by the parents, and it can also be 25% because their kids will have to be well brought up. But another 30% remains. 20 plus 25 plus 25, 70. 30% is part of the society. Now, for this discussion, let us assume that we represent the society. The society which will have to augment the resources, which will have to support the other components of the education, and in many cases, what happens is the society is keeping mum. That could be one of the problems of the educational setup, educational system prevailing in our country. That should not happen. The society's involvement will have to be more, and that's how we have assembled here for the purpose of making a discussion on this thing. And let us have a look at the previous policies. As you all know, we attained freedom by 1947, and at that time, the literacy of the country was ranging from 17 to 19% or 9. And the situation was very poor, and that could be one of the reasons why the earlier period, the community participation or people's participation that I have mentioned earlier was not successful, and that could be the reason why we were not able to attain progress in a 5-year plan. But Jawaharlal Nehru, in 1964, when he was the Prime Minister, took a decision that no, we will have to evolve national education policy, and for that purpose, we'll have to appoint a committee. A committee under the headship of Kothari was appointed, and it submitted its report in 1966. In this point, nobody is making a mention of it, and I think it's my duty to make a mention of his name. One Congress MP, he is not known anywhere, Siddheshwar Prasad, and he was the person who mooted the idea. He said in the parliament, no, we are not carrying an educational sector the way in which it will have to be. So we will have to take some action, and on the basis of the motion raised by him in the parliament that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru took the decision of appointing the commission. When the report was submitted in 1966, he was no more. And by the time the committee made a detailed study, the Kothari Commission report is mentioned anywhere and everywhere when something is discussed on education. And the commissioner, when submitted this report, focused on creating a general pattern of education. And they suggested guidelines and policies for the development of education. But the report was remaining there, and the matter was discussed widely. Anyway, when Srimati Indira Gandhi was in power in 1968, she took leadership for evolving a national policy, and that's known as NEP 1968. That was the first policy document for a country after independence. Based on a Kothari Commission report, it was decided that compulsory education for all children up to the age of 14 will have to be ensured. At this juncture, it is worthwhile to make a mention about the national policies. See, education is in the concurrent list. So naturally, when the union government brings out a national policy, what happens is state government will have to have their own policy documents passed in the legislative assemblies. There'll be some sort of a rift, and under the constitution, we have to remember that when there is a dispute between state and center, the central decision will prevail. But that doesn't happen in India, and that could be the reason why the national policy, the first national policy document, policy statement was not well consumed by the state. Anyway, it's very interesting. Second policy document comes on 1986. Then the Prime Minister was Sri Rajiv Gandhi, and very interestingly, the first three policy documents came from the initiative of Nehru family, and in that case, special or equal educational opportunities were granted for women and reserved communities. That was the first time this sort of a radical decision was taken. Following this, the national policy on education 1992. That time, Sri Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister. Anyway, he took initiative for evolving this policy document and getting it passed in the parliament. Here, education, in the educational sector, we have already seen educational sector is generally divided into school level education and higher education. Higher education be comprising of general education, vocational education, and professional education. In all the cases, changes were evolved and implemented. Then comes Program of Action, popularly known as POA, and at that stage, national curriculum framework was evolved, and changes in the syllabus and teaching practices were implemented at the national level. And again, NCERT was taking the leadership, and at the state level SCRTs are there. And anyway, maybe because of the pressure from the central government, state government also took steps for revising their syllabus and teaching practice. From this stage onwards, education was reformed in a particular manner where more importance was attached. But there is a problem that I will tell you later. Then, right of children to free and compulsory It was under the initiative of Dr. Manmohan Singh, who was the Prime Minister then. And it was a historical act in the sense it made compulsory that it's made mandatory that children at the age of children in the age of 6 and 14 years will have to be given a compulsory education. And it has been a success in the state of Kerala. In other states too, they have been making their own efforts for getting this implemented. But it was, remember, the decision was taken in 2009. Now comes to the present age, where the first new education policy or policy document was prepared in 2016. But there were so many controversies over it. And finally, the government took the decision that we will appoint a committee. The world renowned Dr. Kasturi Rangan was made the chairman of the commission, and they made detailed study. Anyway, it's a very good document. If you get time, you'll have to go through it. Many of the things that are mentioned earlier are mentioned there, or I've taken those things from there. Anyway, again, controversies came up. And finally, the government took the decision that it will be subjected to discussion across the country. And finally, the cabinet approved a new document called New Educational Policy of 2020. This again remains in paper for the reason that very good suggestions are made there, but it's not known how it will have to be implemented. Anyway, after discussing the salient points, we'll come to that. This is the prime factor to be mentioned about the new economic policy of 2020. The government wants, or for that matter, the people want in the economy, equity, access, affordability, quality, the accountability for education. It does mean the learners from any economic or social background will have to be given equal consideration in respect of education. This is really an attractive matter, and definitely this will have to come. Then only we will be able to attain the point or our goal of going for a superpower of India. How the changes are effected, changes are proposed in the new document. New system would be mentioning that or envisaging that rapid changes are required in the knowledge landscape. This I mentioned earlier. The people will have to understand that frequent changes are taking place day by day in the technological and scientific front, and not to cope with such changes, there will have to be training at the lower level for learning how to learn, and this is about the knowledge landscape. And I think there is no need of making a further explanation on economic growth. Economic growth can be achieved only by developing human resources in the proper manner, and that necessitates revamping of the structure of education. Then social justice and equality, we have already covered this point. Social justice and equality can be thought of only by making the society well aware of it, and also creating new values and ethics in the society as a whole. Then cultural preservation and scientific development. This point also touched earlier. We have a glorious past, and we will have to get it adjusted in such a manner that we will have to preserve it well, and the glorious past that we will have to have, and it will have to give us the pride moments. Instead of the existing plus system of 10+2, the new system proposes that it will have 4 compartments. 4 compartments means 5 years in the first compartment, 3 years in the second compartment, and third one in the third, 3 years in the third one, and 4 years in the last compartment. And the corresponding changes could be seen here. I think the next slide will give you an idea, clear idea about what's going to happen. The 4 compartments are named like this. The first compartment is foundational, second is preparatory, and third one is middle, and the fourth one is secondary. The first 5 years will be spent by a student like this. Sure, he will be in Anganwadi or preschool or Valabiga, but Valapadiga, whatever name that you call from state to state, you'll have to be there in 3 years. And some sound is coming. Eyebrows are raised. Whether the kid will be able to cope with the situation. See, I'm telling you, I've gone through certain neurological studies where it has been emphasized that the brain development of a human being takes place at between the age 3 and 6, between the ages 3 and 6. And I think it's a right time. And I've seen in other countries too, developed countries, they are admitted at the age of 3, but they'll not be taught anything because the system itself has been changed. They are given more chances for thinking. So it's not examination oriented. They are given training, and that training will have to be done by the experts in the field. And next 2 years, total in the foundational level, 5 years. In the after 3 years, you will be going to the test class, and you'll remain there for 2 years up to second class. Then preparatory level. Then at the preparatory level, you have to spend for 3 years. You'll be at the age of 8 at that time, and you have to spend there for 3 years. That means class 3, class 4, and class 5. Then you are going to the middle level, where again you are spending 3 years, and in that case, class 5, class 6 to 8. So you'll have to be there for 3 years, and the ages will be age group will be 11 to 14. And the last one is secondary stage, where you have 4 classes, 9, 10, 11, and 12. When you complete your secondary education, you are at the age of 18 years. Anyway, we have to look into these things later. What is aimed at is, what is envisaged in the document is that we are doing this as part of a universalization of education. It means we are not proposing a new system. Rather, we have, the commission says, we have learned, we have tried to understand the system prevailing in other developed countries, and those things are brought here, and thereby we are going to the universalization of education. Another is from free school to secondary school, you are spending 15 years, and in that case, if possible, everything will have to be brought under one roof. That's what is proposed. I don't know how it's possible, how it can take place in a country like India. Again, the practical difficulty comes up. But by 2040, that's what is proposed. We will have to, we may be attaining that level of educational system in our country. And this is the most important point. Earlier, 6 to 14 years, that was the period prescribed for mandatory education, and now 3 to 18, we are making compulsory education, and the gross enrollment ratio, we are trying to make it 100%. These are the questions which will have to be, which remain unanswered. The first thing is examinations in grade 3, 5, and 8. Whether there are arrangements for conducting examinations at the end of the year by the schools? No, that will have to be decided just by the NCERT, and later SCRTs will have to have their own systems and complete freedom is given. But what Kasturi Rangana Commissioner suggests is, no, we are not having an examination-oriented system. So evaluation of process will have to be thoroughly revamped, and we have to go for some scientific method of getting it properly implemented. And this is also another thing. From 9 onwards, you start from 9th class onwards, you start your secondary level of education. 4 years you are there. As has been practiced now, whether you have a board examination at the end of on completion of the 10th class or 12th class, or you have examination in these two sectors, it's a matter which will have to be decided by the concerned bodies. And the only thing that is needed by the Kasturi Rangan Commission report, Kasturi Rangana Commission, and also by the government, that the whole procedure, the whole system will have to be designed with a holistic approach, and the development should be the aim of the whole process of education. This is a matter which requires special attention. There will be a new center that will be coming. It's a national assessment center that is proposed in the policy document approved by the Central Cabinet, and it's called PERAC in brief, and the full form is Performance Assessment Review and Analysis of Knowledge for Policy Development. It will be finalized by the standard setting body or bodies concerned. Another point also is worth mentioning. From 2030 onwards, we will have a new system of recruitment for teachers. In the higher education system, the main change that has been proposed is there will be a degree course for 4 years, where 1 year is completely devoted for education, and that sort of a degree is needed for getting recruited as getting appointed as a teacher in a school. And the next one is then students can choose any subject after class 10. That is the system of prevailing now. So they are broadly classified into two in the present system: science, commerce, and humanities. Then again, you can go for options, and the system is to be worked out whether for the whole 9 to 12 classes, you have the same system of giving awareness about all the subjects, or there will be some sort of options or so. What I have understood from the policy document is there will be no such options or anything. From class 6 onwards, there will be a system for giving a vocational training on the areas where you have the aptitude and real interest. And that will continue from classes 9 to 12. That's why I understand. Anyway, the matter needs to be clarified by the concerned bodies. And definitely, this is a matter which will be given a pre-consideration by the concerned bodies or bodies concerned, and they will finalize the document or they will finalize the system. Then, this is a matter requiring attention and is of vital significance. As far as the teachers are concerned, they will be given a professional standards for there will be national professional standards for teachers, and that will be implemented by 2022. Here also a problem comes up. What about the existing teachers? There is no provision in the policy document or in the commission report for giving training to the existing teachers. So that is a matter, I think, which will be decided after discussions with the teachers and also the other people who are directly involved in the educational process. Another matter is widely debated across the country. It's up to standard 5, the medium of initiation would be your vernacular. Personally speaking, I am for it. I'm of the firm view that up to class 5, this system will have to be implemented, but it's not going to be accepted, especially in Kerala or Tamil Nadu. And now I think the central government is going for an amicable settlement of giving option. You can opt any language at your preference for the purpose of learning, and English is also there. And in most of the cases, Kerala will be going for English. I have certain doubts about the implementation of the policy document. That's what is mentioned here. See, it's a very attractive document, and it's sure that we will be able to attain development in the education sector, and this is what is the need of the hour. All those things are there. But when implementation comes, many issues would come up. For example, in developed countries, in the budget, it could be seen that 10% of the GDP or around 10% would be earmarked for education. Because in many of the countries, the government considers that it's the duty of the government, it's a prime obligation of the government to ensure education. And education is completely at the lookout of the government. And here it's not the case. You'll get surprised when you get the figure. We are earmarking 3% for educational sector, and that means for general education and higher education. And now the Kasturi Commissary Rangan Commission stipulates that it will have to be 6%. It's also another matter which may be becoming very controversial. How 6% could be earmarked, and how the methodology adopted, and in what way we are going to do it. It's also a matter which will have to see, and for that purpose, let's wait and see. No provision for training for existing teachers, that I've already mentioned. Then integrating, this also I've told you earlier, integrating preschool with the government school system may pose infrastructure problems and logistics challenges. Yes, definitely, if you are interested in bringing them, or when the consolidation process takes place, there will be so many initial problems, and logistics problems would be the most important one. Anyway, let us hope that there will be, let us view all these things from an optimism, And that optimistic view may be leading you to this happen. I would like to wind up my lecture here, and I'm giving you the mic. You can raise some questions, or you can ask for certain clarifications. In certain cases, I'll be just endorsing your view, or in certain cases, I'll be able to give you whatever information that I have as a person who is actively involved in education. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So I think now we can move on to questions, right? So can you hear me, sir?
Yes, go ahead. Go
Yes.
ahead, Vida. Go
Okay, okay. So the first question is from the YouTube live chat that we have. With rampant trade unionism among the teachers, especially in schools, do you think that these proposed reforms will be accepted by the majority of the teachers guided by the unions politically biased?
I have a definite answer for this thing. You see, we are going for a change. In the process, what I've seen is teacher is an important component in the education process. And he is given the responsibility of inculcating skills, knowledge, as well as ethics and values. Naturally, he will go for a change and he will become a part of it, because we are all people, we are going to be socially committed. We'll be understanding our social responsibility. The first point that I mentioned is there will have to be people's participation for the success of any development measure. And for that matter, education becomes a crucial factor in the economy. And for that vital factor, definitely all those who are actively involved would provide support. Or we will have to create a culture for that. That's all.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. So next is a question from Vimala Ramakrishnan. So the question is, sir, the common school system, that is CSS, was recommended around 1964, not followed. Instead, education system has created a deep rift between the rich and the poor. What is your view on the CSS?
Properly cleared that the Kothari Commission report, which was submitted in 1966, was not properly implemented in our country. Still, the literacy rate, which is remaining at 17%, rose to the level of 79% for the people, for the students below the age group of 18 years. And that means the education has done a wonderful job to the economy. We should not forget it. Kothari Commission report was not implemented for several political reasons, maybe because of certain other reasons too, maybe because of the positive results, maybe because the reason that we are not giving that much consideration for the progress of educational sector. And made it clear when highly developed countries are earmarking 10% or more than that for the progress of education every year. We are still remaining at 3% or below that. Earlier it was ranging from 2 to 2.5%. Only recently it was made 3%. So that's a thing that we have. Maybe there are several reasons of that, social, political. I mean, I can give you. There could be social reasons, there could be economic reasons, there could be political reasons, there could be legal reasons, there could be spiritual reasons. All those things are there.
Okay, sir. So next is a question from Professor KP Mohandas. Will not the politics in our educational institutions play spoil sport for any innovative policy changes in education?
You see, the educational policy, very important factor is mentioned. It's a capacity building. Capacity means it's applicable for individuals. An individual in the present society is requiring support or support for a capacity building in 5 different dimensions. Just now I told you, there will be the physical capacity building, you will have to be made healthy. Then the mental capacity, that's also another factor to be taken care of, to be well taken care of. Another factor is there will have to be emotional capacity. Then the fourth one is needed for any society. It is intelligent. Intelligence, it's connected to intelligence, and we can call it intellectual capacity. And last one, I don't agree to it. It's a spiritual capacity. And when we are living in a society, and when society is the major component in the process of education, I think we will have to change our mind. The politicians will have to change their attitude. People from all spheres of life will have to change their attitude, and we will have to have a common thinking where we will give more consideration for our young generation. And in that case, I think all these doubt will get automatically vanished away. Okay.
Okay, sir. Now there's a question from Taila Ananthakrishnan. So she has said that she has addressed it directly to the speaker. So it would be nice if you can just take a look and then give your answers.
So this will continue. Then we are coming to the end of the story. Was it? Okay. Please ask the question.
Okay. Then we'll move on. So the next question is the right to education being implemented? It is a question from Lalita SVNL.
As a citizen in the country, we'll have to obey the law. There had in 2009, the central government took the decision that right to education is assured for children between the age of 6 and 14. If it has not been implemented, we are also a party to it for that sort of a defect and that sort of a weakness or that sort of a lapse, whatever name that you call for that. I don't think, but I take my responsibility. I am also responsible for it because I was not taking that much interest as a role in the member of this society to get it implemented. And that may be the reason why it didn't take place. Anyway, it's going to be made 15 years now, from 83 years to 18 years, it's going to be made mandatory. And let us pray that it would take place in our economy. Let's go for the best.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So Taila Ananthakrishnan has posted her question. So English should be the medium of instruction right from the start to make our children prepared for crucial learning stages later in their education. What's the opinion of the speaker in this? So she would like to know.
I've already made a mention of it. Personally speaking, I'm the firm view that it will have to be in vernacular up to class 5. I'm very firm on it. Maybe because I'm talking in my home, I'm hearing my parents in that way, and when I'm going to school, people from different socio-economic background are coming. They can very well communicate with me, and that's the reason why I am firmly of the view that it will have to be like that. But I'm not adamant because we'll have to go by the decision of the society as a whole. The society wants it in a different way. I'm for it because in that way we'll have to go for it. There cannot be any sort of a division in that way. I'll be expressing my opinion, and in Kerala made a special mention that people want to be in English, and I think the central government is also going for amicable settlement. They'll be agreed to it. You can go for 2 options.
Okay. So can we move on to the next question?
No,
Okay.
the things that I have to tell, that's all. Okay.
Okay, sir. Now there's a question from Balakrishna Venukumar.
Okay.
Is Skill India program stand as a substitute to overcome the inefficiencies of schools?
Who are to be blamed for that? Teachers, students, parents, or society? Let him answer to this question. I cannot give a definite answer for that. I think everybody is responsible for that. We don't want it. So we have an apathy for change, and we say this lame excuse that the other party is not cooperative. That goes like that. That will continue in our society. And if it is discontinued, we will have another sort of educational system where progress will be through education, through the human resources developed there.
Okay, sir. So in the chat box, we do have many statements and opinions by the people. So it would be really nice if you can look into it also.
Definitely, because I'm interested in this area, and that's why generally speaking, I'm from the commerce faculty. So I'll only have a little bit, when I'm in higher education, I'll pretend that I don't have any ability to solve this stuff. So that's not my case. So I'm very much interested in knowing all these things. Definitely, I'll go through it, and it will be a learning platform for me.
Okay, sir. So I think we can come to the end of our session. So now as we come to the end of today's session, I would like to welcome Engineer Suhail Reke of the Wakam Maulavi Foundation Trust, Chair of IEEE PES Kerala Chapter, to give away the vote of thanks. Can we have you, sir?
Yeah, I am unmuted now. Good evening, friends. It gives me great pleasure to partake in this great event. I'm happy to see so many of my friends in this assembly, starting from Achyut Shankar, Professor P.S. Chandramohan Nair, J. Murli Mohanlal, MC Mohan Nair, Venugopal, and my teacher, K.P. Mohandas. It's very nice to see all of you here. NEP 2020 is the current buzzword at many discussion forums. The quality of education decides the destiny of a nation. Therefore, not only educationalists, but every common citizen is interested in the new changes or reforms in the education sector. The key role of, we all know that the key role of education is to teach to think, but that does not happen. Mark Twain, the witty writer, has said, I have never let my schooling interfere with my education. Our present education system faces many challenges, starting from catching up with the knowledge explosion, employability, getting opportunity, and so on. NEP 2020 has introduced many reforms that were lucidly explained by today's distinguished speaker, Professor Shank Dharan. He started with the evolution of the policies in educational front in India, and the salient features of the present NEP policy, the challenges, and you have given a good exposure to us on the new reforms and the issues that are to be overcome in the implementation. It is a very good exposure for all of us to understand this topic, which is very vast, and you may not have time to read and understand everything. So in this 1 hour session, we have been benefited to hear from an expert of an important area that needs to be totally restructured or changed. We all know that technology is advancing and so many new areas, new branches of sciences are evolving. So we need to catch up with the situation, and your talk helped us to understand, give us an insight into the policy, and that's a great gain that we all have today. I would like to congratulate the partnering organizations in conducting interesting sessions, ably coordinated by Engineer Harinder Lal. And the program has caught attention globally we are now, every Wednesday, we are all looking for hearing some new topic from some great experts. Keep it up, and this is a great achievement for IEEE and all the partnering organizations to share knowledge, to expose people to challenges facing the society. And we had a variety of people talking on different issues. So I would like to thank Harinder Lal for the great initiative and all the organizations for doing a wonderful job. I would also like to thank the organizing team, Aishwarya, Fida Fatima, Achit Shankar for introducing the speaker, and also Jacob for giving all the technical support. We hope to see next week with another brilliant topic and speaker. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And once again, I would like to share my sincere gratitude to Saringharan sir for presenting and sharing such a treasure of knowledge to all of us. So next, as we come to an end of our event, I would like to inform all of you about our next talk, that is the Intersociety Weekly Webinar Series talk number 25, The Most Astonishing Number in the World. It is a talk by Dr. A.K. Ashraf, Deputy Director, Liquid Propulsion System Center, ISRO. It will be on 30th of September, Wednesday, 6 to 7 p.m. So stay tuned and make sure all of you attend that wonderful session as well. So now I'd like to declare the meeting closed. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you to all the attendees that we have today.